The night the world believed I got engaged to Korea's most untouchable billionaire heir, my kingdom was already collapsing. To the media, it looked like a scandalous alliance between Africa's most mysterious woman and the elusive Samsung heir. But the truth? Our engagement was a lie, a contract, a shield. Because if the corporations trying to erase my bloodline discovered I was the last princess of a hidden African kingdom, they wouldn't just destroy me, they would erase an entire nation. And the man pretending to love me, he might be the only person powerful enough to save it, or the one who exposes everything. The cameras started flashing the second I stepped out of the black sedan. Reporters shouted questions in Korean, English, French, voices crashing together like waves. Microphones stretched toward me as security struggled to hold the line. And beside me stood the man the entire world was staring at, Lee Ji-hoon, the most elusive heir in South Korea's most powerful tech empire. Cold, untouchable, untamed by the media, and tonight, my fiancé. At least, that's what the headlines would say. His hand settled lightly against my back, guiding me toward the entrance of the Seoul Grand Hotel, where hundreds of journalists waited to capture the historic engagement. To them, it was a shocking romance, an African business prodigy suddenly engaged to the most guarded billionaire heir in Asia. Every step I took beside him was part of a lie we had signed in ink 3 days earlier. A contract engagement. No love, no emotions, just protection. Because the corporations trying to erase my bloodline were powerful enough to topple governments. And Ji-hoon's name, his family's empire, was the only shield strong enough to hide me. He leaned slightly closer as the cameras exploded again. "Smile," he murmured quietly. "You're supposed to look like you're in love." I forced a perfect smile for the cameras, because the world could never know the truth. That beneath the elegant dress and diamond ring, I wasn't just a mysterious woman from Africa. I was the last princess of a kingdom that powerful people wanted erased from history. And if our enemies discovered where I came from, this fake engagement wouldn't just become a scandal, it would become a war.
Before we continue, we welcome you to AFRO-KOREAN Love Thrillers, the home of dark romance, forbidden passion, power, betrayal, and captivating revenge stories. Please do me a favor. Tap that comment section and tell us quickly where you are watching from. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new thriller that drops here. Sit back and relax, because this story is just getting started. Now let's get back to our story.
The doors of the Seoul Grand Hotel opened, and the roar of the crowd outside surged inside, like a storm breaking through glass. Flashes exploded everywhere. Cameras, phones, news crews broadcasting live. The world had been waiting for this moment all afternoon, and now they were watching us. Lee Ji-hoon stepped forward first, calm and controlled, his presence alone enough to silence the rising chaos. He didn't smile much. He never did. But the quiet authority in his posture carried the weight of a man used to commanding empires. I followed half a step behind him. The camera started flashing the second I stepped out of the black sedan. Reporters shouted questions in Korean, English, French, voices crashing together like waves. Microphones stretched toward us as security struggled to hold the line. "Mr. Lee, is the engagement real? Who is she? Is this a corporate alliance? Are wedding plans already underway?" Ji-hoon's hand settled lightly against my back, guiding me toward the center of the marble staircase where the press had gathered. To the world, it looked natural, intimate, like the subtle touch of a man protecting the woman he loved. Only I knew it was calculated, strategic. 3 days ago, I had been sitting across from him in a glass office overlooking the Han River when he slid the contract across the table. A contract engagement. 12 months. public appearances, absolute loyalty in front of the media. In return, the Lee family empire would provide something no one else on Earth could give me: protection. Tonight was the first test. Ji-hoon leaned slightly closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. "Smile," he murmured quietly. "You're supposed to look like you're in love." I forced a perfect smile for the cameras, slipping my hand into his as reporters shouted even louder. Gasps rippled through the crowd the moment the diamond ring caught the light. The headlines were already writing themselves. Africa's mysterious businesswoman engaged to Korea's most untouchable heir, an alliance no one had seen coming. Ji-hoon raised his hand slightly, signaling the reporters to calm. "We understand everyone has questions," he said smoothly in English, his voice carrying across the hall with practiced ease. "But today is a private moment between two families." The lie rolled off his tongue flawlessly. If the world looked closely enough, they might have noticed something strange. We never looked at each other for too long, never lingered, never crossed the invisible line between performance and reality. But the cameras didn't see strategy. They saw romance. They saw power. They saw the beginning of what they believed would become the most influential marriage in Asia. Ji-hoon's fingers tightened slightly around mine as the crowd erupted again. From the outside, we looked perfect, untouchable, unbreakable. But inside, my chest, a cold truth echoed louder than the screaming reporters. Because the world could never know the truth. That beneath the elegant dress and diamond ring, I wasn't just a mysterious woman from Africa. I was the last princess of a kingdom that powerful people wanted erased from history. And tonight, with millions of eyes watching our engagement, the war for that kingdom had just begun. The room where it happened was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the far wall. No reporters, no cameras, no flashing lights. Just a polished conference table inside a private executive suite overlooking Seoul's skyline. And the man who would soon become my fake fiancé. Ji-hoon sat across from me, his posture perfectly straight, his dark eyes unreadable. The city lights behind him turned the glass wall into a mirror, reflecting two strangers about to change each other's lives. Between us lay the contract, 37 pages of legal language that would convince the entire world we were in love. I didn't touch it yet. Neither did he. For a moment, we simply studied each other. This was the man whose name controlled companies worth more than the GDP of small countries. A man the media called untouchable, ruthless, brilliant. And he was about to become my shield. Ji-hoon finally broke the silence. "If you sign this," he said calmly, "the world will believe we're engaged within 48 hours. His voice was steady, controlled, the voice of someone used to making decisions that moved markets. But I noticed the way his fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table, as if measuring me. "Your family's legal team worked quickly," I replied. "They were paid to." Of course they were. Nothing about this arrangement had anything to do with romance. Every clause was precise. Public appearances together, joint statements, a carefully staged proposal, a relationship designed like a corporate merger. I flipped through the pages slowly, though I had already memorized every word earlier that day. 3 years. That was the length of the engagement. 3 years under the protection of the most powerful corporate family in Asia. 3 years to make sure the enemies hunting my bloodline lost my trail completely. Ji-hoon finally broke the silence. "Once you sign," he said calmly, "you'll be under my family's protection. Anyone investigating you will have to go through us." That was the entire point. Because the corporations trying to erase my bloodline were powerful enough to topple governments, but even they would hesitate before provoking the empire behind the man sitting across from me. Still, something about the arrangement made my chest tighten. "Why agree to this?" I asked quietly. His gaze didn't waver. "My family wants to end certain rumors about my lack of interest in relationships," he said. "A high-profile engagement solves that problem." So I was a solution to his scandal, and he was a shield for my kingdom. Cold. Logical. Perfect. He slid a silver pen across the table toward me. "No love," he said evenly. "No emotions. Just protection. A contract engagement." I picked up the pen. For a brief second, I wondered if history would remember this moment as the night everything was saved, or the night everything began to fall apart. Then I signed my name. Ji-hoon signed his beneath mine. The sound of the pen against paper was almost inaudible, but in that quiet room, it felt like the echo of a gunshot. Our engagement had begun, and somewhere in the world, enemies who wanted my kingdom erased had just gained a new target. 3 nights after the contract was signed, I stood alone on the balcony of Ji-hoon's penthouse, watching the endless glow of Seoul. The city never slept. Neon lights shimmered across the Han River while traffic flowed like veins of light through the streets below. Power lived here. Real power. The kind built from money, technology, and influence. But none of it compared to what had been hidden for centuries. Behind me, the glass door slid open softly. Ji-hoon stepped onto the balcony, his presence quiet but impossible to ignore. He leaned slightly against the railing beside me, his gaze drifting across the skyline. "You've been staring at the city for almost an hour," he said. "I'm thinking." "About your enemies?" I shook my head slowly. "About home." The word felt heavier than it should have. Most people believed Africa's secrets were buried in deserts or jungles long swallowed by history. They were wrong. Some secrets were protected by silence, and the one I carried was older than the corporations now hunting it. Ji-hoon studied me from the corner of his eye. "You told my legal team very little about your background," he said calmly. "Only that powerful companies are trying to uncover it. That's because even speaking about it is dangerous." The wind lifted slightly, carrying the distant hum of the city upward. For a moment, I debated whether to say anything more. But if we were going to survive this arrangement, he needed to understand the scale of what he had stepped into. "There's a place in Africa," I said quietly, "that doesn't appear on modern maps." Ji-hoon didn't interrupt. He simply listened. It existed long before colonial borders were drawn, before corporations discovered the resources beneath our land, before satellites could see everything. The kingdom had survived centuries by doing the impossible, remaining invisible. Hidden within mountains and dense forests, protected by geography and generations of carefully guarded knowledge. The outside world believed the region was uninhabited. That was exactly how we wanted it. It's small, but powerful in ways outsiders don't understand. Ji-hoon's voice remained calm. "And you're its princess?" Not a question, a statement. I turned to look at him fully. Yes. I expected disbelief, shock, but his expression barely changed. Instead, he asked the only question that truly mattered. Why would corporations care about a hidden kingdom? Because the truth was far more dangerous than royalty. Beneath our land, I said slowly, is something they've been trying to find for decades. Rare minerals, energy sources the world's most powerful tech companies needed for the next generation of technology. The kind that could shift global power overnight. They believe my family knows exactly where it is, I finished. Ji-hoon was silent for a long moment. Then he exhaled softly. So this fake engagement, he murmured, isn't just about protecting you. I met his eyes. No. It was about protecting something much larger. Because if the corporations hunting my bloodline discovered I was the last princess of a hidden African kingdom, they wouldn't just destroy me. They would erase an entire nation. And now, thanks to the contract we had signed in silence, Ji-hoon's empire was standing directly in their path. Ji-hoon did not move for a long time after I finished speaking. The city lights continued flickering beneath us, but the world between us had shifted. He wasn't looking at me the same way anymore. Not as a mysterious woman his lawyers had vetted, not as a convenient partner in a strategic engagement. Now he was looking at me like a puzzle whose final piece had just fallen into place. "You said corporations have been searching for this for decades," he said quietly. "Yes. And they believe your family knows where it is." "They don't just believe it," I replied. "They're certain." The wind carried the faint scent of rain through the air as I rested my hands against the cool railing. "For generations, my bloodline has protected something the world's most powerful industries need," I continued. "Something that could change global technology overnight." Ji-hoon's voice remained steady. "Rare minerals." I nodded. But that word barely captured the truth. What lay beneath our kingdom's land was more than valuable. It was revolutionary. Materials capable of powering future energy systems, advanced microprocessors, and technologies still locked inside research labs. The corporations searching for it weren't simply greedy. They were desperate. And desperation made powerful people dangerous. "Decades ago," I said, "exploration teams came close to discovering the region. I could still remember the stories told by my grandfather, foreign companies arriving with maps, drones, and promises of development. But they never found what they were looking for, because the kingdom had already erased every trail. Our people moved villages," I explained, "destroyed roads, changed satellite images, even convinced governments the area was protected wilderness. A kingdom that existed in plain sight but remained invisible." Ji-hoon watched me carefully. "So if they discover who you are, they won't just come for me. They would come with lawyers, with private security forces, with governments eager to claim the resources beneath our land. They would dismantle the kingdom piece by piece," I said quietly. "Corporations could do what armies once did, only cleaner, quieter, with contracts instead of weapons. That's why your name matters," I added. Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow slightly. "My name?" "Yes." His family's corporate empire controlled technology used across the world. Any company investigating me would immediately run into something far more intimidating than a hidden African royal family. They would run into him, and provoking the empire behind Lee Ji-hoon would create consequences most companies weren't ready to face. For the first time that night, Ji-hoon leaned back slightly, considering everything. "So the world believes I'm protecting my fiancé," he said quietly. "In reality," I replied softly, "you're protecting an entire kingdom." Another quiet moment passed between us. Then he gave a faint, almost amused exhale. "You realize," he said, "this arrangement just became significantly more dangerous." I met his gaze without hesitation. "Yes. Because the corporations trying to erase my bloodline were powerful enough to topple governments, and now they would have a new obstacle standing in their way, Ji-hoon's empire. Which meant one thing. Our fake engagement was no longer just a shield, it was a declaration of war. And somewhere in the world, powerful people were already starting to notice. The next morning, I learned something important about the man the world believed I was going to marry. Lee Ji-hoon trusted no one. Not his assistants, not the board members running his family's empire, not even the security team that followed him like shadows through the penthouse. I noticed it during breakfast. The dining room overlooked the river, sunlight spilling across the marble table where a perfectly arranged meal waited for us. Yet Ji-hoon barely touched anything. Instead, he studied a tablet filled with financial reports, while two security officers stood silently near the door. "You read reports during breakfast?" I asked. Without looking up, he replied, "I read reports during everything." His tone was calm, but there was something mechanical about the way he spoke, like someone who had learned long ago that relaxation was dangerous. I watched him for a moment. The world called him a genius CEO in waiting, the quiet heir who could dismantle competitors without raising his voice. But what fascinated the media most was his distance. He didn't attend parties, he avoided interviews, and rumors followed him everywhere. Rumors that the billionaire heir trusted no one. Now I was starting to understand why. One of the security officers approached quietly and handed Ji-hoon a small envelope. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he glanced at the man who had delivered it. "Who else has seen this?" Ji-hoon asked. "No one, sir." Only then did he break the seal. His eyes moved across the document for barely 5 seconds before he slid it back into the envelope and placed it beside his plate. "What was that?" I asked. "A background report." "On me?" That earned the faintest hint of a smile. "You've already been investigated," he said. "Extensively." Of course I had. Anyone standing beside the heir to one of the world's most powerful corporate dynasties would be examined under a microscope. "Then who was the report about?" I asked. Ji-hoon leaned back slightly in his chair. "Someone who works for me." The answer was so casual it took a moment to register. "You're investigating your own employees?" "I investigate everyone." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, and maybe, in his world, it was. When you grow up inside an empire, you learn something very quickly. His gaze lifted to meet mine. Everyone wants something from you. Money, power, influence. Sometimes all three. And trusting the wrong person, he finished quietly, is the fastest way to lose everything. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I realized something. "You don't trust me either," I said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. Ji-hoon didn't deny it. Instead, he reached for his coffee and took a slow sip. "No," he said simply. Then he placed the cup back on the table. "But you're the first person in a long time who hasn't asked me for anything." His dark eyes studied me carefully. "And that," he added, "makes you interesting." Outside the windows, the city buzzed with life. Somewhere in that massive skyline, powerful corporations were searching for the truth about me. But sitting across from the man who trusted no one, I realized something equally dangerous. If we were going to survive the war coming for my kingdom, I might have to become the one person he finally learned to trust. 3 days after the engagement announcement, the first crack inside Ji-hoon's empire appeared. It started with a message that wasn't meant for me. I was in his office, sitting on the long leather sofa near the window while pretending to read through a stack of charity proposals his public relations team wanted us to review together. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive coffee. Ji-hoon stood behind his desk, scanning through several files projected on the glass screen embedded into the wall. His security chief entered quietly. The man moved like someone trained never to draw attention to himself. "Sir," he said. Ji-hoon didn't turn. "What is it?" The security chief hesitated. Then he placed a tablet on the desk. "We intercepted something." That made Ji-hoon look up. "From where?" "Internal network traffic." A faint tension filled the room. Even I could feel it. Ji-hoon stepped closer to the tablet and studied the screen. His expression didn't change, but the air around him shifted. Cold, focused. "What exactly am I looking at?" he asked. The security chief spoke carefully. "Encrypted data transfers leaving the company servers every night for the last 2 weeks." Ji-hoon's voice remained calm. "And you're only telling me now?" We needed confirmation first. Do you have it? A pause. Yes, sir. The man tapped the screen. A list of internal departments appeared. Research labs, development teams, strategic planning divisions, some of the most guarded projects inside Ji-hoon's corporate empire. All of this information, the security chief said, has been copied and transmitted to an external receiver. A spy inside one of the most powerful technology companies in the world. I set the papers in my hands down slowly. Ji-hoon finally glanced toward me. You should leave, he said quietly. But I didn't move. Someone inside your company is selling secrets, and you think I shouldn't hear this? His gaze sharpened slightly. You're not involved in this. I held his eyes. You're sure about that? Because if someone had discovered even a fragment of the truth about me, then this espionage might not be about his technology at all. Ji-hoon seemed to consider that possibility. Then he turned back to the tablet. Who is it? He asked the security chief. The man hesitated again. That hesitation was enough to make my stomach tighten. Finally, he said the name. Ji-hoon didn't react immediately, but I saw the smallest shift in his shoulders. You're certain? He asked. Yes. Ji-hoon leaned forward, resting both hands against the desk as he stared at the screen. The spy wasn't a junior employee, not a hacker, not an outsider. The data had been stolen from someone deep inside the company, someone who had direct access to sensitive research, someone Ji-hoon had personally promoted 2 years earlier, which meant the billionaire heir who trusted no one had still been betrayed. Ji-hoon straightened slowly. Lock down all research servers. No one leaves the building. The security chief nodded and left immediately. The office fell silent again. After a moment, Ji-hoon spoke without looking at me. You see why I don't trust people. I walked closer to the desk. Whoever this spy is, I said, they're not working alone. His eyes lifted to mine. I could see the calculation already happening behind them. Of course they aren't, he replied quietly, because corporations capable of hunting a hidden kingdom would never rely on just one spy. And if they had someone inside Ji-hoon's empire, then the war for my kingdom had already begun. The call came just after midnight. I was still awake, standing near the window of the guest suite in Ji-hoon's penthouse when my secure phone vibrated against the glass table. Only 3 people in the world knew that number, and none of them would call unless something was wrong. I answered immediately. Speak. For a moment, there was only the sound of distant wind on the other end. Then the familiar voice of General Nkosi filled the line. Your Highness. Hearing that title here, in the heart of Seoul, felt almost unreal. Report, I said quietly. There was no hesitation. The vault has been inspected. My grip tightened slightly around the phone. And everything remains secure. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding finally escaped my chest, because the kingdom hidden from maps protected many secrets, but none more important than what lay beneath it, the secret vault beneath my homeland. Carved deep inside the ancient mountain that guarded the capital valley, the vault had existed long before my grandfather was born, before satellites, before international mining corporations, before the outside world even understood what resources lay beneath African soil. It was never meant to store treasure. It was meant to guard knowledge. The council wanted you to know, General Nkosi continued, the records remain untouched. Records, maps, geological surveys collected over generations, proof of exactly where the rare minerals beneath our land were buried. The kind of information powerful corporations would wage wars to obtain. Any signs of intrusion? I asked. None. But his voice carried something heavier beneath the reassurance. What is it? I asked. There was a pause. Satellite activity over the northern ridges has increased, he said. My stomach tightened. How many? 4 separate reconnaissance passes in the last week. Too many. Far too many. The kingdom had survived for centuries by remaining invisible, but modern corporations didn't rely on explorers and rumors anymore. They used satellites, AI scanning systems, predictive geological modeling, which meant they were getting closer. "Listen carefully," General Nkosi said. "We believe someone is narrowing their search area." A chill ran through me, because if the corporations hunting my bloodline were finally focusing on the mountains, then they were approaching the one place that could expose everything, the vault. "You must not return yet, not until we know who is behind the scans," he added. I looked out at Seoul's endless skyline. Thousands of miles away, beneath the mountains of my homeland, the secret vault remained hidden, but the world was circling closer. "I understand," I said quietly. After the call ended, I remained standing in the dark room. A few seconds later, the door behind me opened. Ji-hoon stepped inside, his expression calm but observant. "You just received news from home," he said. It wasn't a question. "How do you know?" I asked. "Your face changes when you're thinking about your kingdom." I studied him for a moment. Then I told him the truth. "There's a vault beneath my homeland," I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. "A vault? Yes. And inside it," I continued quietly, "is the one thing the corporations hunting us want more than anything." Ji-hoon folded his arms. "The location of the minerals." I nodded. "The exact location." For a moment, the room fell silent again. Then Ji-hoon spoke calmly. "Which means if anyone ever finds that vault, they won't need my bloodline anymore. And when that day came, my kingdom would stop being invisible. It would become the most valuable target on Earth." The war began quietly. No explosions, no declarations, just movements across the world that most people would never notice. But Ji-hoon noticed, and so did I. 3 days after the betrayal exposed fragments of my identity, the first signal appeared on the massive financial display wall inside Ji-hoon's strategy room. Numbers shifted, investment patterns changed. Mining corporations that had never shown interest in Central Africa suddenly began acquiring land rights in neighboring regions, quietly, aggressively. Ji-hoon stood in front of the screen, arms folded, watching the data scroll across the glass panels. "They're positioning themselves," he said. "For what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Exploration corridors." My chest tightened, because exploration corridors meant infrastructure. Infrastructure meant drones, geological scanners, and satellite analysis. And those things only appeared when companies believed they were close to something valuable. "Look here," Ji-hoon said. He tapped the screen. A cluster of corporations had formed a joint research partnership only hours earlier. Energy companies, advanced semiconductor manufacturers, extraction groups known for moving into unstable regions, all working together. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "They formed a consortium." Ji-hoon nodded, "which means they believed the discovery is real. Not rumors, not speculation. Real." The room fell quiet except for the soft hum of the data processors. Across the screen, shipping routes and satellite passes began appearing. Research vessels repositioning along the African coast, private aircraft traveling between corporate headquarters. The world was moving, and almost no one realized why. Because the kingdom they were preparing to hunt didn't officially exist. It never appeared on maps, governments didn't recognize it, international databases had no records of it. To the outside world, it was a myth, a forgotten story buried in oral history, which made the situation even more dangerous. "They don't believe your kingdom exists," Ji-hoon said quietly. "No, they believe the minerals exist." I nodded slowly, and that was enough to start a war. Because corporations didn't need to believe in kings or queens. They believed in resources, profit, control. Ji-hoon zoomed the map outward, revealing a network of satellite scans sweeping across the mountainous region where my homeland remained hidden. "They're narrowing the search area," he said. My mind immediately returned to General Nkosi's warning. Satellite activity over the northern ridges had increased. Now I understood why. "They're triangulating geological signals," I murmured. "Yes." Ji-hoon studied the map carefully. "If they keep refining the data," he continued, "they'll eventually identify the mountain formations hiding your kingdom." My pulse quickened. "Then we stop them." He turned to look at me. "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" I held his gaze. "With the same weapon they're using." He raised an eyebrow. "Power. Because corporations might control satellites, they might command billions of dollars, but Ji-hoon's empire controlled something just as powerful: technology, supply chains, global influence. If they want a war for the resources beneath my kingdom," I said quietly, "then we make it impossible for them to reach it." Ji-hoon watched me for a long moment. Then the faintest smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Interesting." Outside the glass walls of the strategy room, Seoul's skyline glowed against the night sky. Somewhere across the world, corporations were preparing to claim a kingdom no one believed existed. But they had just made one critical mistake. They started their war without realizing they were now facing two empires.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and lets you know when new videos drop. Lastly, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video.